In the year 1066, the fate of England was decided not by one battle, but by a struggle for power that would reshape the country for centuries. Three powerful rulers claimed the English crown. One was the Anglo-Saxon king Harold Godwinson, who had already taken the throne. Another was the Viking ruler Harald Hardrada, who believed he had the strongest historical claim. And the third was a Norman duke from across the English Channel, William the Conqueror. Within a single year, armies would cross seas, kingdoms would clash, and England would face one of the most decisive turning points in its history. But the real story is not just about a famous battle. It is about how the Norman Conquest transformed England's politics, culture, and identity, creating a kingdom that would later become one of the most influential powers in world history. Before we explore this dramatic chapter of medieval Europe, take a moment to subscribe, and support the channel if you enjoy deep historical documentaries about civilizations and global power. Now, let's return to England in the 11th century, just before everything changed. By the early 11th century, England was one of the most organized kingdoms in Europe. The Anglo-Saxon rulers had developed systems of governance, taxation, and law that allowed the kingdom to function with surprising efficiency. Under kings such as Edward the Confessor, England maintained close cultural and political ties with continental Europe. But there was one major problem. Edward had no clear heir. When he died in 1066, the question of succession immediately triggered a crisis. The English nobles supported Harold Godwinson, one of the most powerful figures in the kingdom, who was quickly crowned king. However, others believed the throne belonged to them. Across the North Sea, Harald Hardrada, the king of Norway, prepared an invasion force. And across the English Channel, the ambitious Norman ruler William the Conqueror began assembling an army. England was about to become the center of a three-way struggle for power. The first challenge came from the north. In September 1066, the forces of Harald Hardrada landed in northern England. They defeated local forces near York and appeared poised to claim the throne. But Harold Godwinson responded quickly. Marching his army nearly 300 kilometers north, he surprised the invading army at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. The result was decisive. Hardrada was killed, and the Viking threat collapsed. Yet Harold's victory came at a cost. His army was exhausted, and at that exact moment, a second invasion had begun. Just days after the northern battle, William the Conqueror crossed the English Channel and landed in southern England. The Norman army established its position near Hastings, preparing for a confrontation that would determine the future of the kingdom. Harold now had to march his exhausted troops south to face a new enemy. On October 14, 1066, the two armies met at the Battle of Hastings. The Anglo-Saxon forces formed a defensive shield wall on a hill. The Normans attacked repeatedly with infantry, archers, and cavalry. For hours, the outcome remained uncertain. But eventually, Norman tactics broke the English lines. During the battle, Harold Godwinson was killed. With the death of the king, the Anglo-Saxon resistance collapsed. England now belonged to the Normans. When William the Conqueror became king, he faced a difficult challenge. He had conquered England, but he still needed to control it. To secure his rule, William introduced sweeping changes to English society. Norman nobles replaced many Anglo-Saxon elites. New castles were built across the country to maintain military control. One of the most famous examples was the Tower of London, constructed as both fortress and symbol of Norman authority. The conquest also reshaped England's social structure. William introduced a version of the feudal system that connected land ownership directly to military service and loyalty to the crown. In 1086, the king ordered a massive survey of land and resources known as the Domesday Book, one of the most detailed administrative records of the medieval world. These reforms helped create one of the most centralized monarchies in Europe. The Norman Conquest did not only transform politics, it also changed England's language and culture. The Norman ruling class spoke a form of French, while the common people continued speaking Old English. Over time, these languages blended together. This linguistic mixing gradually produced Middle English, the foundation of the modern English language. Many English words related to law, government, and administration still reflect this Norman influence. Even today, the legacy of the conquest remains embedded in the language itself. Although William secured the throne, the struggle for power in England did not end. The Norman kings and their descendants faced constant challenges from rival claimants, rebellious nobles, and foreign rivals. Successive rulers worked to strengthen royal authority and maintain control over their lands. This long process gradually shaped England's political institutions and royal traditions. Over time, the Norman dynasty helped transform England from a collection of regional powers into a unified kingdom with a strong central monarchy. The Norman Conquest of 1066 remains one of the most important turning points in English history. In a single year, the old Anglo-Saxon order collapsed and a new ruling elite reshaped the kingdom. Through warfare, administration, and cultural change, the Normans transformed England's political structure, language, and identity. The impact of these events would echo through centuries of English history, influencing the development of law, governance, and national identity. And in many ways, the foundations of modern England can still be traced back to that dramatic struggle for the crown in the year 1066, because sometimes a single moment in history can alter the course of an entire nation.